A girl is stranded on a deserted island with 5 dangerous men, setting the stage for a hellish survival game. The only way to survive is to escape these volatile lunatics, but her escape plan is violently thwarted. A man brutally pins her to the scorching sand. His icy voice, laced with rage, slams down on her. "Miss Flona, you'd better explain yourself." The girl is speechless with despair. If he had known the answer, he wouldn't have run away in the first place. It all started just minutes earlier. This seasoned summer camp instructor had simply picked up a novel on the roadside to pass the time. A sudden accident transported her into this melodramatic and dark 19-plus fantasy novel. Even worse, she became the villain in the story, suffering a tragic end. Margaret Flona is also the second daughter of a duke in the Langrid Empire. In the original story, Margaret, out of jealousy, is the only woman who manages to win the hearts of 5 male leads. She even tried to push him off a cliff, only to be killed by the utterly crazed male protagonists. Her memories gradually merged with Margaret's. According to the novel's plot, she could regain her freedom if she survived a year on this magically imprisoned island. So, before that, she had to find a place to hide, as far away as possible from the male protagonists who hated her, especially Crown Prince Enoch Astrogrid. But why was he here? The girl almost collapsed on the spot. How could it be so difficult from the start? Enoch's appearance here meant this was the beginning of the novel? The thought that the male protagonist woke up on this beach in the original story had barely crossed her mind when Enoch didn't move an inch. The girl's heart stopped, and she ran towards the forest behind her. But after only 2 steps, an iron wrist suddenly grabbed her ankle, slamming her to the ground with tremendous force. The next second, a burning body pressed heavily on her. "Miss Flona, where are you going?" The girl was completely stunned. Help! She'd been grabbed by the person she least wanted to see. Seeing his hesitation, the hand gripping his chin tightened. "What's going on?" she cried. In a moment of inspiration, he pointed sharply to the sky and shouted, "What's that?" Enoch instinctively looked up, taking the opportunity to break free. But his elaborate gown became a hindrance. Enoch grabbed him again. "Do you think I'm funny to you?" Flone was both aggrieved and angry. "How should I know what's going on? I'm just as confused as you are." Enoch leaned closer. "You want me to believe your lies?" He was so agitated. It wasn't hard to understand. The Flone of the past was like a persistent stalker, constantly hovering around him, even going so far as to buy him so-called love potions, causing him to have an allergic reaction and nearly die. From that day on, Enoch developed a deep loathing for Florn. Florn's numerous foolish acts were enough to land him on trial, yet he always managed to escape unscathed thanks to the Duke's power. Enoch, on the other hand, though the Crown Prince, had a mother of humble origins, possessing only the title of heir apparent with no real backing. It was truly a misunderstanding, though my family does have some power. But we would never dare kidnap the Crown Prince of the Empire. Sigh. Enoch paused for a moment, muttering to himself, "That makes sense. Could it be Rodfan's doing?" Rodfan, that madman he had stripped of his Crown Prince title and exiled to the far north. Seeing that he seemed persuaded, Florn shook off his hand. "Your Highness, since you've come to your senses, may I take my leave?" But the next second, his hand was gripped tightly again, forcing a stiff smile. "Your Highness, can you let go of me first?" "No, if I let go, you'll run away again." Seeing that reasoning with him was futile, he began to feign weakness, but it hurt so much. "Sigh," Nock thought, determined not to let him off the hook. "Stop playing the victim." Even as he said this, the grip on his wrist unconsciously loosened slightly. "The most urgent thing is to figure out where we are. Let's go up the mountain and check the terrain to see if this is an isolated island or connected to the mainland." He was right, but the girl's heart sank. He clearly remembered the original story's setting. Once the sun sets, the monsters on this island will swarm out. He quickly tried to stop her. "It's getting dark. If we want to explore the terrain, we should wait until tomorrow." Nock readily agreed. "Then let's do as you say, Mississippi. We'll go tomorrow. Let's look around the area first and see if there's anywhere to hide." The girl breathed a sigh of relief. She hadn't expected this guy to be so much better than she thought, especially in communication. Having experienced war, his accurate and decisive judgment of the situation was strangely remarkable. Enoch, in the original story, was a ruthless character who single-handedly secured his position as crown prince. Yet after being stranded on a deserted island, his obsession with the female lead gradually drove him to madness and irrationality. The survival rules on this island were unique. It wasn't traditional desert island survival. Many modern items were scattered across the island, but the protagonists in the original story, not knowing their uses, mostly discarded them carelessly. This was precisely his advantage. If he could make good use of these modern items, his chances of survival would greatly increase. He immediately decided to temporarily follow Enoch and the others to the cabin where the protagonists had lived in the original story, obtain resources, and then find an opportunity to escape. However, just as he finished his calculations, Enoch sensed his warning. "You'd better not think about running away." This man was frighteningly perceptive. But then he reconsidered. It seemed safer to stay with the crown prince than to deal with a group of men who disliked her. Enoch casually picked up a branch and swung it around. "Not bad," he thought. "It can barely be used as a weapon." Flona stared at the withered branch, her face full of skepticism. Could this thing really fight monsters? Soon, reality provided the answer. The two had just stepped into the edge of the forest when a deafening roar suddenly erupted, followed by a frantic run. They couldn't approach from afar. A giant wolf, its size comparable to a lion, suddenly leaped out from behind the bushes. Impossible. The original work clearly stated that monsters only came out at night. He couldn't afford to overthink it. Enoch had already pulled her into his arms and launched his attack simultaneously. The wooden stick in his hand pierced directly through the monster. The girl stared in disbelief. He had dealt with it with just a branch. Only then did she remember that Enoch seemed to have a connection to blood in the original work. Psychological trauma. Just as he was thinking this, the man's twilight suddenly swept over him. His heart tightened, and before he could speak, he was violently pushed away. He'd been worried just moments before. But why had the monsters appeared so early? Was their appearance triggered not only by nighttime, but also by darkness? If so, they could be slaughtered at any moment before finding a safe hiding place. The color drained from his face, and his body trembled uncontrollably. Slightly trembling, Enoch took it all in, thinking it was his turn to react. For the noble lady, this was probably the first time she'd encountered something like this. "Miss, are you all right?" She stepped forward, her tone not exactly gentle, but lacking some of her previous strength. "What's wrong with Flora?" Enoch suddenly reached out and touched her face. "I saw you looked like you were about to die. That's why I asked about your current appearance." Completely different from when he pushed her away earlier. Flora was puzzled. Why was this man suddenly concerned about her? Did looking at him remind her of her wounded comrades from the past? "I'm fine. Thank you for saving me earlier." Enoch responded, "You should know you're still a suspect, right? Once we return to the Empire, I will thoroughly investigate this matter, so you are not allowed to die without my permission." The girl thought to herself, what's the point of interrogating him? He's clearly innocent. Okay? Seeing his silence, Alok impatiently urged, "What are you standing there for? It's dangerous here." Flor, though finding this guy fierce and difficult, also felt a sense of security. Before sunset, they set up their temporary shelter. Enoch invited him to go in first, but after leading him inside, he coldly warned him to keep his distance. "Stay away from me. I have no interest in sleeping with you." The girl instantly bristled. "I thought so too, but who knows what you'll do in the middle of the night?" Unfortunately, Enoch only glared at her, and she chickened out again. It was still early, and Flor was wide awake. He couldn't help but break the silence. "Your Highness, are you sure you want to escape? We haven't had a drop of water since we woke up. If this continues, we might die of dehydration before the wild beasts even come looking for us. What trick are you planning now?" Enoch had just turned around when he saw the girl looking at him expectantly. I'll go look around. Maybe I can find a coconut. I'll be back soon, she said, making him momentarily stunned. He inexplicably agreed. Only after he left did he realize his mistake. Did a noble lady like him even know what a coconut leaf looked like? He got the answer in a moment. The girl's voice was excited, and her professional instincts led her to begin explaining. It's this fruit that grows on trees. The juice inside can replenish fluids, but be careful. Overripe coconuts can cause diarrhea, and eating them will only worsen dehydration. Watching him struggle to crack the hard coconut shell with a stone, Enoch sighed helplessly. Give me the coconut, he said. The card split in his hand, and he handed one half to Flo. The girl marveled at his amazing wrist strength. He dipped his finger in and tasted it, confirming it wasn't spoiled before saying, No problem, you can drink it. For the entire day, Enoch silently observed the girl before him and the arrogant, domineering girl he remembered. The haughty duchess was completely different. She could identify wild berries to quench her thirst, warily avoid poisonous plants, and even know how to use the terrain to avoid danger. These survival skills were far beyond what a pampered noblewoman should possess. Was this really the same Fleury who only revolved around him, her heart and eyes filled with foolish infatuation? It was as if she had been given a completely different soul. The thought had barely formed when Fleury's voice pulled her back to reality. Your Highness, what's wrong? Locke snapped back to reality, staring intently at her. Miss, you seem like a different person. The girl's mind went blank for a moment. She forced herself to remain calm, quickly gathering her thoughts. People always change in extreme circumstances, don't they? She had to admit it. He already considered her a kidnapping suspect. If he knew she wasn't the real Margaret, he might think it was him playing tricks on her. Enoch's gaze. Such a change in circumstances was extremely rare. However, judging from Mrs. Current judgment and adaptability, it wasn't impossible. He got up, dusted himself off and said, Let's go back first. Flona's heart slowly calmed down. Thankfully, they had managed to get through it. In the cramped space, the two lay back to back, their breathing clearly audible. Occasionally, his back would touch a solid, warm surface, making it even harder for him to fall asleep. Clearly, Enoch was also wide awake. He brought up what had just happened. That wasn't an ordinary beast. It exuded the aura of a demon. Strangely, I tried to activate my sword energy but found it unusable. This was just as he had expected. Both magic and divine power were sealed here, and one could only survive by relying on their own strength. But with Enoch's monstrous strength, he shouldn't have to worry for now. Enoch sighed again. Miss, you probably won't understand. Why am I telling you all this? Flona silently clenched his fist. Look at this guy. But who did this? And why me and Miss of all people? He had to clarify again. If I really wanted to kidnap your Highness, I wouldn't be in a place like this. I would have locked you up in some secluded mansion. Of course, I never even considered that. He quickly changed the subject, fearing he'd make things worse. By the way, Your Highness, what were you doing dealing with the backlog of official documents before you came here? And the day before? Did you encounter any suspicious people? Are you interrogating me? The girl asked matter-of-factly. Indeed, she was interrogating him. The man didn't argue further and obediently answered the questions. I haven't left the palace for the past month. I've been dealing with year-end settlements. Enoch's tone was slightly weary. This guy was a workaholic. Before he could recover from his shock, Enoch countered, And what about Miss? What was she doing before the incident? Flona couldn't help but laugh. He couldn't very well say that the original owner was swooning over his portrait at that time. My mother was enjoying afternoon tea at the salon. Because I love socializing and have met so many people lately, I couldn't recall anything suspicious. Enoch looked unconvinced, so he stopped questioning. All right, that's the end of the interrogation. Get some rest today, conserve your energy. We still need to go up the mountain tomorrow to find out where this wind came from last night. A wave of heat still lingered. He casually brushed a stray strand of hair from his neck, and Enoch blushed instantly. but he immediately threatened fiercely, "If you dare cross this line, I'll throw you into the sea right now." Floor was driven crazy by his unpredictable mood swings. "Even if you beg me, I won't go." According to the original story, at this moment on the deserted island, besides him and Enoch, there were also several other protagonists, princes of the Hestia kingdom, and figures of imperial awe. The captain, the saintess radiating holy light, the enigmatic archbishop, and the great mage Kate. In the original story, Enoch was supposed to encounter the saintess Joanna after arguing with Margaret. However, the plot went awry from the start. What worried him even more was that he hadn't finished reading the novel. The plot might have deviated so much, and the hut he was staying in might no longer be safe. Even so, he had to find the hut and obtain the necessary survival supplies. They then searched for the bunker discovered by the female protagonist. However, in the original story, they were teleported back as soon as the female protagonist found the bunker. Floor gazed at the twinkling starry sky, his mind wandering. Perhaps it was all just a dream, and when he woke up tomorrow he would be lying in his familiar bed, and it would all be just a fleeting dream. But if that were the case, not being able to see the great mage Kate, whom he longed for, seemed rather regrettable. Deep within the isolated island, a group of monsters roared. A disheveled figure suddenly emerged from the dense bushes as they sped past. The man, his face contorted with rage, stared at the unfamiliar jungle and couldn't help but curse. "Damn it! Where am I?" He pulled his skirt up to his thighs, tied it up, and neatly fastened his long hair, preparing to go fishing in the sea. This was because the girl had transmigrated into a dark, 19+ rated novel, and was forced to endure a full year on a deserted island with a group of crazed male protagonists. Only then would she have a chance to leave. During this time, she not only had to be wary of the increasingly out-of-control male protagonists around her, but also evade the monsters lurking in the dense forest. Floor woke up early, chilled to the bone. He muttered that next time he'd make a fire to sleep, but as he got up, he realized he was covered with Enoch's coat. "Awake!" A voice called from behind. The girl turned around. The man's back was straight, his eyes clear, showing no trace of the languor of just waking up. "You didn't sleep all night." Enoch averted his gaze and didn't answer, though he roughly guessed it was out of caution. A surge of anger still rose within him. Expending so much energy in the wild was tantamount to suicide, especially since they were going to the summit today. Enoch's temples throbbed from his nagging, and he finally managed to stammer, "I'm not sure if Miss is trustworthy." Flora stared at him and suddenly laughed, saying she didn't trust him. Yet she took off her coat and gave it to this two-faced fellow. He'd never seen such a thing before. Just then, his stomach protested incongruously. Flora blushed with embarrassment. It seemed they'd have to find some wild fruit in the mountains to fill their stomachs. But the moment they reached the summit, his heart sank. This was indeed the novel he'd read. Enoch instantly became agitated. Damn it, he had absolutely no idea where they were, or who had brought them here. Like him, Flora, he felt a sense of despair. The gate wouldn't open for another year. Could he survive these increasingly crazed male protagonists? He should have found a chance to escape earlier, but climbing the mountain had exhausted him, and looking at Enoch, he realized he was in danger if things continued like this. Flora took a deep breath and reached out her hand to him. "Since we know this is the end, let's go down the mountain. We need to get back alive. You know Enoch hasn't slept a wink since yesterday, and hasn't eaten a single thing. Even with his extensive experience, his judgment had plummeted. He carefully chose his words. We need to get down the mountain before the monsters appear at nightfall." Just when she thought he would coldly refuse, Enoch grasped her hand. To her surprise, he smiled. "Thank you." Her stomach protested loudly again. Flora's cheeks instantly turned bright red. "Enoch, turn your head away. I didn't hear anything. It seems they should solve the food problem first." The man looked puzzled. "Miss, are you serious?" Of course. Flora tied up her long hair and bent down to roll up her skirt, the dazzling white making Enoch's face flush instantly. He whirled around, his ears practically bleeding. "Before I get back, could you please start the fire?" The man mumbled a reply. Fleur glanced at him. Is it really necessary? Hasn't he ever seen a woman's legs before? She picked up the harpoon she had just made and hurried towards the sea. Fortunately, there were no monsters in the sea. Hunting was the only way to get enough nutrition. First, she would find small fish trapped in the crevices of the rocks, crush them with stones, and scatter them into the sea as bait. Then, she just needed to hold her breath and wait for the prey to appear. Now was the time. He hurled the fish in his hand, and the spear struck. Looking at the live fish on the spearhead, he had succeeded on his first try. He seemed to be born for wilderness survival. Although he couldn't reach Belle's level, he felt an indescribable sense of accomplishment. Just then, he heard a voice behind him. He turned around and saw Enoch standing on the shore. How long had this guy been watching? Their eyes met, an awkward silence hanging in the air. Another fish. He'd pretended not to see him for now. Enoch quickly started a fire. His opinion of Flona had completely changed. She was impressive. I didn't expect you to know how to prepare fish, Mississippi. Most fishing enthusiasts know how. Flona replied casually, but froze mid-sentence. Something was wrong. In the original story, the female lead couldn't even stand the smell of fish, waiting for the male leads to bring her the prepared fish. How come he was the one doing it himself? Even though he'd volunteered, a strange sense of resentment rose within him. Enoch felt a chill run down his spine under her gaze. Why was she looking at him like that? Flona sighed. Nothing, she said, and began to examine the prepared fish. Suddenly, a shadow loomed over her. Enoch was right in front of her. Really nothing? The magnified handsome face before him made his breath catch in his throat. The next second, a warm hand gently landed on his head. Sorry, did I scare you? I was just watching you because I found it amusing. Let me do it next time. He took over the grilling of the fish, and Flona covered her burning cheeks. His heart was practically leaping out of his throat. No, he had to pull himself together. He couldn't be fooled by the promise of quick cooking. The golden, crispy skin sizzled with oil. He picked up the larger one and offered it to Enoch. This one's for you. Enoch didn't take it, instead reaching for the smaller one. This isn't the Langrid Empire, so there's no need for such formalities. Please take care of yourself first. I understand you feel uneasy in unfamiliar places, but I'll find a way to get you out of here alive, so don't worry too much. But this thoughtfulness didn't make him happy. Having read the original story, he understood even more how dangerous this place was. Whether Enoch could even leave the island alive was uncertain. The other man suddenly stood up. When I find an opportunity, I'll send you away first. Then you can go find someone to rescue you. The girl froze. What? Enoch's eyes turned cold. Did you really think I'd just let you go like that? Didn't I say you must stay by my side, miss? Remember, you can only leave when I see you off. Flora felt a chill run down her spine. To someone unaware of the truth, these words might sound like a love-struck confession, but they were actually a threat. Just then, a warm coat was draped over her shoulders. It's Enoch's coat, isn't it? I was just too hot, so I'm giving it to you. No need to thank me, Flora. A coat? Yes, he couldn't suddenly become so kind to Margaret, but at least he could get a good night's sleep tonight. The girl's departure instantly broke Enoch's defenses. He thought this noble lady, who needed to survive on her own, was parting ways with him without a second thought, simply because they disagreed. He insisted on waiting for rescue on the beach, while Flora, knowing the door wouldn't open for another year, decided to go to the island to find supplies. After all, this dress, it severely hampered his plans, but he couldn't reveal that he knew the future. If he did, he would only become a suspect again. In that case, let's part ways here. Alas, Nock's face instantly darkened, but the girl remained oblivious. Thank you for saving me from the monsters. The time I spent with your highness seems to have brought me comfort, so I'll take my leave now. Enoch stepped forward to stop him. I clearly warned you yesterday. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. You can only leave my side if I send you away. Flona retorted. But now we have completely different opinions. I'm just making the most reasonable choice. In his view, the only danger on the island at this stage was the monsters. As long as he found a place to hide before sunset, he could avoid danger. The immediate priority was to find a supply hut or bunker so he could accurately determine when to open the door. Moreover, he wanted to investigate why he had transmigrated into Margaret Enoch. Suppressing my feelings about what happened, Miss Flona. Do you think it's reasonable for you to venture alone onto the island? A suicidal act? The girl suddenly tiptoed closer. Are you worried about me? Fearing for my safety, he actually preferred Enoch, wanting to keep him by his side to monitor me. Don't worry. I'm much more resilient than you seem. You've seen it these past few days. So worry more about yourself. His words were interrupted again. Come with me. I'll accompany you to the island. But I'll continue searching for a way to escape. Fleur was stunned. The man who hated Margaret the most was actually willing to travel with him. Had their close companionship these past few days lessened his aversion to this body? He smiled. Good. If he could gain Enoch's trust through this, his future might be rewritten. Even with someone clearing the way, his clothing made progress somewhat difficult. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. There was usually a cave below the cliff. Although the journey might be dangerous, there was no better place to stay. Enoch looked suspicious. You learned these things at the Duke's house? His heart skipped a beat, and he gave a casual reply. I've received all sorts of education in my family. It seems the Duke cherishes her greatly. For the young lady to undergo such dangerous training is truly astounding. Why is Fleur paying him? Suddenly, he snapped. It looks like it's going to rain. Let's hurry there. Before he finished speaking, his skirt was caught on a branch, causing him to lose his balance and fall heavily to the ground. Enoch rushed forward, reaching out to help her up. Are you all right? Unfortunately, a sharp pain shot through his ankle. He had twisted it. Enoch knelt down to examine him. It's quite a serious injury. He probably won't be able to walk for a while. Excuse me. Before Fleur could react, he bent down and scooped her up in his arms. The girl froze instantly, instinctively struggling. Put me down! But Enoch tightened his grip. Reaching the cave before the rain started was the fastest way. Not wanting to fall, Fleur could only resignedly hold onto her. But it was too close. The deeper they went into the dense forest, the quieter it became, with only the occasional bird flitting by. He secretly glanced at her. He really was a novel's male lead, which made him feel exceptionally reassured. And he seemed to harbor some goodwill towards him. He hoped that this goodwill wouldn't disappear after meeting the original female lead, and he would use this opportunity to increase his trust in him. Your Highness, as you've seen, I'm truly different since coming to this island. Consider it a rebirth. I won't be like I was before. So Enoch stopped. Indeed, when speaking to you, I wouldn't be as annoyed as before. However, I won't develop any feelings for you, Mississippi. What I'm doing now is merely fulfilling my duty as a gentleman. Please don't have any unwarranted expectations, lest you cause trouble later. Flona's heart sank, but he immediately forgot about it. Something was rapidly approaching them. The sun hadn't even set yet, and the monster shouldn't be there. It was almost an instinctive reaction. He forcefully pushed Prince Enoch away from danger, and the two dodged the sneak attack. He stumbled and fell right in front of the monster. Before he could react, a thick tree trunk came crashing down on it. Enoch rushed out and engaged the monster in combat, shouting, "Miss Flona, run!" The girl instantly regained her composure. She couldn't die, and she couldn't become a burden to Enoch. She climbed a nearby tree, but reality never favors her. The monster that had caught up with her bit into her skirt. That damned skirt again. Enoch immediately shook off the monster and ran towards it like a madman, but it was too late. He was unwilling to accept this fate. Why did this always happen to him? In his last moments before his consciousness faded, he only heard Enoch's heart-wrenching scream, "Margaret!" He remembered. Before he transmigrated, the original Margaret had proposed to Enoch, only to be cruelly rejected. The enraged noblewoman had publicly mocked him as a bastard child of impure blood. Such harsh words. No wonder he loathed Margaret's investment. He shouldn't have had any expectations of Enoch from the start. He should have just dumped him and gone to find the local constable alone. But he had thought that after these past few days together, their relationship might have improved slightly. As consciousness returned, the first thing he smelled was the pungent stench of blood. Floor slowly opened his eyes, seeing a scene of carnage filled with monster corpses. Enoch standing a short distance away with his back to him. He endured the pain, swaying as he sat up, wanting to ask if he was all right, if he was injured. But when he saw his hand, he froze instantly, bright red blood dripping incessantly from it. He suddenly remembered the original story's setting. Enoch's post-war syndrome caused him to go berserk upon seeing human blood, a state that would relentlessly drain his body until he collapsed from exhaustion. Therefore, he had to find a way to stop him immediately. To stop the rampaging protagonist of the novel, the girl not only knocked him unconscious with a stick but also bound him tightly. So when Enoch awoke, he found himself tightly bound hand and foot. Not long ago, Floor had moved him to the cave. Beneath his undergarments were large scratches from a monster, blood still seeping from the wounds. Perhaps the monster's claws were poisonous? He tore open his skirt to apply a makeshift bandage to stop the bleeding, considering his berserk state. The bandages weren't yet removed, so just in case, he tied him up, leading to the current situation. Enoch defensively stood up. "What did you do to me? Untie me right now," the girl thought. This guy's mania is truly wonderful. But her face remained impassive. "You can't move now. The wounds will reopen and worsen." Enoch struggled violently. "Don't move!" he shouted sharply, and the man actually froze in place. Enoch remained kneeling. Even Floor, a large dog that had been acupunctured, was stunned. This move truly shocked him. In the original story, he had never seen the protagonist react like this. Enoch looked away in embarrassment. "Why can't I move my body? It's all right now." He leaned closer and gently stroked Enoch's head, his gentle voice warm, slowly soothing the man's tense nerves. His eyelids drooped, and he collapsed to the ground with a thud. The girl breathed a sigh of relief. If something had gone wrong just now, he probably would have suffered the same fate as those monsters during the day. In the original story, when the male protagonist went berserk, it was always the female protagonist who calmed him down. His agitated hair-pulling was a romantic scene for Anna, a chance to build their relationship, but for him, it was a matter of life and death. That night, Enoch developed a high fever due to an infected wound. Although he regained his senses in the morning, his condition was still poor. "This can't drag on any longer. I'll go find some herbs." He quickly returned with some food. Aunt Knox sat there watching him leave, only remembering that she was still bound when the girl's figure disappeared. She sighed. "At least untie me before you go." Meanwhile, Flona quickly found some herbs to stop bleeding and reduce inflammation, and was planning to return before nightfall. Suddenly, a sharp cracking sound of snapping branches came from behind him. No, it was noon. The sun was at its strongest. Monsters couldn't possibly be there. Could it be a human? His heart tightened, and he turned and ran in the opposite direction. On this isolated island, besides the heroine, Yuna, there were only 5 male protagonists. Aside from the kind-hearted Yuna, the others were all hostile towards him. Dealing with Enoch alone was already troublesome enough. A chill ran down his spine, and a mocking male voice came. "What? So there's someone here." The second male protagonist from the original work stood in his way. Silver hair, red eyes, and the signature single earring that was Caden Blank. Almost instinctively, he turned and ran. If Enoch hated Margaret the most, then Caden was the greatest threat to him. Because in the original story, Margaret ultimately died at Caden's hands. The second son of the Marquis of Rohard, Caden was kidnapped by the temple as a child and forced into inhumane experiments. For profit, the temple made a dirty deal, completely covering up the incident. This dark past became the fuse that ignited his madness. From then on, Caden began to hate his family and the temple, ruthlessly destroying any research led by the temple or experiments funded by his family. Unfortunately, the original Margaret had funded the temple's research with a huge sum of money. Suddenly, her wrist was grabbed, the immense force causing her to stagger forward. Caden had gone to the Duke of Flora's mansion to demand a halt to the research, but Margaret forcibly pushed the experiment forward. This incident fueled his hatred for the Flora family, so he had to distance himself from them. "Let go of me," she cried, pushing him away, but something suddenly hit her eye, causing her to burst into tears. The man looked anxious. "Are you all right?" Flora looked at the pendant on Caden's robe. He picked it up. It was heavier than he expected. "Wait a minute." Caden suddenly reached out and touched her face. "I feel like I've seen you somewhere before." The girl's heart leaped into her throat, terrified he would recognize her. But Caden abruptly released her, pulling her to her feet. "Sorry, I startled you. Please understand." In the middle of nowhere, suddenly bumping into a noble lady, anyone would find that suspicious. According to the original setting, Caden needed the earring to regulate his disordered abilities after escaping the temple. However, the earring was accidentally damaged after he landed on the island. His magic went out of control, often causing sudden high fevers and even uncontrollable emotions. The red light in his eyes flickered. "But why did you run away? Could it be?"